When exactly was that time where you said, this is the time for you to get a salary?
So I actually didn't take a salary until 6 months later. And we were doing probably $250,000 a month in revenue.
Wow.
Set a goal that's big enough because I know that I will be a fundamentally different person when I achieve that goal than I am today.
Hey, awesome people. Welcome to Bootstrapped Stories, the only podcast where founders of bootstrap companies share in all transparency the ups and downs of their journey. Starting a business comes hand in hand with loneliness, the pressure of not being successful, and overall, lots of challenges. After meeting with hundreds of entrepreneurs in the past years, I figured out that we all have struggles and make lots of mistakes when building a business. But the truth is that most people are afraid to share this publicly. That's what motivated me to start this podcast, to show that we're all on the same journey, facing the same struggles, and to give energy to all entrepreneurs worldwide to continue their adventure. Even if sometimes it can be really challenging and we often feel like giving up, in the end, it's all worth it. Today, I'm happy to chat with Nathan Barry, CEO of ConvertKit. Hi, Nathan. Thanks a lot for accepting the invite.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I'm super excited. Just to give like a bit of an intro to the audience, during this amazing episode, I want to cover 3 different topics. The first part, I really want to find out the keys to your success in growing ConvertKit to 30 million in annual recurring revenue. Next, I also want to have real founders talk and go through, the ups and downs, and especially the downs, because I think this is what really help us as founders to stick together and get this energy to go through the storms. And in the last part, we'll see basically how you manage to structure your team that's also spread out across 28 cities, which I think is quite a challenge. And I have tons of questions about this. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So let's get back, to the key success of your business and see, going back to the beginning, how exactly and how fast did ConvertKit grow in the early days?
Yeah, so we kicked it off actually January 1st, 2013.
Wow.
Wondering if you want to ever know the exact day that you start a company, I highly recommend making it the first day of the year. It's much easier to recommend.
Yeah.
to remember. So the first 6 months, I did a public challenge, and I called it the Web App Challenge. And my goal was to grow from 0, like just an idea, barely even an idea, to 5,000 in monthly recurring revenue within 6 months. And live blog the whole thing. Like, make sure to put a post every week. I didn't actually pull that off. We got to about 2,000 in MRR at the end of that time period, and then it kind of was this long, actually a slow decline for the next 18 months after that, of bouncing around in that say 1,300 to 2,000 range.
Were you working on the sides, or were you full time on the project?
I was also blogging and selling digital products like ebooks and courses.
Okay. And
so probably about half my time was on ConvertKit and half my time was on the rest of the business. So then about 2 years in is when we were not doing very well. Somewhere in there, my friend Heaton Shaw really convinced me to either shut down the business or double down on it. I decided to double down on it. I put more of my own money in. So we put in $50,000, hired a team. That was all of our money at the time. I'm still amazed that my wife was like, sure, yeah, let's do it. So we hired a team of just 2 people, but 2 people plus me, we were able to build the product a lot faster. And that's when we started to get traction. We also started to focus on direct sales. We started to narrow our market, to actually just specifically focus on professional bloggers. And in that, we were able to grow from, 2,000 a month to 5,000 a month after a few months to 10,000 6 months later to, we actually started the year 2015 at $2,000 a month in revenue. And we ended 2015 at just shy of 100,000 a month in revenue.
Wow, that's huge.
That was the crazy growth. And then the next year was 100,000 to 500,000. And then it's up from there. Now, we're at 2.4 million or whatever a month.
That's really huge. And I'm curious to understand, you're at like 2K MRR, going ups and downs for like about 2 years.
Yeah.
And then you're making money on the side with all the digital products, so you can save a bit of money and sustain yourself. But then you decide to put all your money into the product. Like, what comes through your mind at that point? Do you think like it's is it a type of situation where it's like risk everything or die? Like, how do you feel like when you go to work in the morning? Or do you feel pressure? Do you feel stressed? Like, how exactly, like in what type of situation were you at that time?
Yeah, I think I was most frustrated. I built an audience of probably like 8,000 people at that point. I could earn a solid full-time living, making $200,000 a year, selling digital products. But I could not get this SaaS app to scale. I couldn't get it to, customers to sign up for it and stick with it. And so I was just frustrated at that disconnect. And that was probably the overwhelming emotion at the time. So when Heaton was talking about like this idea of double down or shut it down, what stuck with me the most is how I would feel like a couple years later. Let's say I shut down ConvertKit. I realized that I would always look back a few years later and wonder, could I have made this work? Like, I didn't feel like I'd given it my truly best effort and made it happen. So I came up with a simple framework for deciding whether to shut down or double down on a project. And the first question is like, do you still want this as much today as the day that you started? Because if not, like, that's okay. We all start things where we're like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to start a SaaS company. I'm going to start this business, whatever else. And then sometimes it's a weekend. Sometimes it's a year. And we're like, I don't really want this anymore. And that's okay. Just admit it to yourself. That's totally fine. Like, document your learnings and shut it down and move on. For me, I still really wanted it. Like, I was like, I want to run a SaaS company. I have this other thing that's working, but like recurring revenue is the direction that I want to go. So it's like, okay, question number 2 then is, have you given this every possible chance to succeed? Because if yes, if you really, really want it and you've given it your absolute best effort and it is not working, then in good conscience, you can shut it down. Like, you gave it your best. It didn't work. Like that's entrepreneurship. That happens. Maybe the timing is wrong. Maybe the product is wrong and the market's wrong. There could be any number of things. Now, on the flip side, for me, the answer was no, because I was like, well, I mean, I'm working on it part-time. I have this other thing that I'm doing. And so that meant that there was a disconnect between what I say I really want and the way that I'm spending my time and energy. And I had to reconcile that disconnect, because I knew that if I shut it down now and walked away, I would always wonder, okay, but if I had made it my full-time thing, or if I had tried this marketing or sales method, could it have worked? And that's like a level of regret that I wasn't willing to live with. And so then that made it a clear decision of, okay, I have to double down on this and really try to grow it into something. And I'm very grateful that I did.
Nice. Yeah. It worked out pretty well. And I'm curious, because for me, the moment I really, got into SaaS, I started a bit like running agencies and doing services. But once I really felt, like this, how amazing a SaaS business was when I started to pay myself from the revenue of the SaaS company. You mentioned that in 2015, at the end of the year, you were at like a 100K MRR. When exactly was that time where you said, okay, Nathan, now it's time, you have recurring revenue. Obviously, you want to invest, in the company, but you're fully bootstrapped. So you're the one managing where you want to put the money. This is the time for you to get a salary. What feeling did you have from that point? And when was the time you started to pay yourself?
So I actually didn't take a salary until 6 months later. And we were doing probably $250,000 a month in revenue.
Wow.
Before I started taking a salary. I used to drive this old Mazda 3. And I remember picking up people on our team from the airport, even a long time into the company. Like, we were probably making $700,000, $800,000 a month. I'm still driving this. It was a great little car, but it was all that people were like, why are you still driving this car? But all the money just went into the business. there was a moment. So when we were at 100,000 a month in revenue, we were growing 25% month over month. So just an insane growth rate. And we had no money. We were spending every dollar as soon as it came in on support, on hiring new team members, like whatever we possibly could to get going. And yeah, it was like there wasn't extra money for me to take a salary. I like withdrew money from all of my investments, just in like Wealthfront. Robinhood wasn't a thing then, so I had money. And so we cashed out that. And then I had a bit of money that I had from the ebooks still coming in, like a couple $1,000s a month.
Okay. So you could sustain yourself and
yeah. When I ran out of money personally at one point, I took a week off from working on ConvertKit and did a product launch to my audience, like rebooted, like did a second edition of a book that I'd written. And that made like $20,000.
Nice.
And then that was enough that I could focus on it again. So it was a long time into ConvertKit before I took the first paycheck. 3.5 years.
Wow.
And basically 300,000 a month in revenue.
And, like you're talking about all these tough times, especially at the beginning. And I feel like entrepreneurship, especially, when you're the CEO, is quite a lonely journey. What, according to you, were like your biggest challenges to growing ConvertKit, especially as a solo founder?
Biggest challenges, something that people talked about is word of mouth as a channel, right? If you ask most founders, like, hey, how did you grow? And they're like, or what drove this growth, right? They would say, oh, word of mouth, right? People talk about our product, it spreads, all of this. And that's incredibly frustrating to hear a founder of a company that's not growing, because like the sarcastic version of me is like, oh, word of mouth. Like there were all the levers in front of me and I just forgot to pull the word of mouth lever. Right. I'll go back to my computer. I'll pull that lever and then we'll have
hypergrowth coming in.
Hypergrowth. Here we come. What I realized later is that those founders are all telling the truth. Word of mouth was a huge, huge part of it. They're absolutely right. The thing that I wasn't understanding is that word of mouth is a flywheel and it takes a lot of effort to get it going. So years ago, I got to work on this project at an orphanage where we were drilling a well and there wasn't reliable electricity. So we put a flywheel on top of this well, so instead of like a hand pump, it's an actual wheel. It's when we first got it up and going, it was two of us, one on each side, like spinning this heavy wheel. And it was super, super hard. But then you get it going and like the first rotations are hard. The next ones are a tiny bit easier and easier. And as it builds up momentum, by the time it's really running and pumping water and all of that, it's pumping water up hundreds of feet from below the earth. And I can just stand there and I'm just like casually spinning it.
Easy peasy.
And that's what word of mouth is. You need something to get that going. And for us, that was sales. We needed the ability to, but you have to have customers who can tell other customers. And so everyone would talk about like, oh, here's scalable ways to attract customers. And eventually what I settled on was just doing direct sales of cold outreach, getting people set up, launching something, like doing the whole migration for them, basically doing whatever it took to make them a customer. Cause I knew that that was like a one rotation of the flywheel. And I knew that would make the next rotation just the tiniest bit easier. And that's when word of mouth would kick in. So when you hear people talk about word of mouth, know that it's going to take a whole lot of work that doesn't feel like it scales in order to get that going.
Yeah, definitely. And basically, like you talk a lot about like acquiring your customers. I know you're focused on content creators and SMBs. So I'd love to know also, as you grow, did you have any like challenges with customers, whether it's like bad reviews or I don't know, like customers complaining? Like when you're targeting SMBs, because it's usually like mass markets, once in 1,000, you always have like people that can talk trash, etc. Like what was like the hardest thing with dealing with customer support? Did you face any like challenges on that side?
Yeah, we really struggled on the customer support side where like our product was buggy in the early days. It was complicated. And then as you're getting all these customers coming in, it was really hard to like provide good support and to provide it quickly. So we would have times where, like, I remember we're probably 140,000 a month in revenue, 130,000. Half of our team, I think we had 9 people on the team, and at least 4 of them were just working on customer support. And, you know, even with that much of the team dedicated to it, we were still responding to customers in like 36 hours. And it was super delayed, and customers were frustrated. And there's like, often they would have, by the time we finally got back to them, they would have finally, like, they would have already figured it out. So we'd spend all this time answering a ticket for someone who was like, thanks, I already figured it out on my own. Whatever else. And so it was just a terrible experience. And that took a lot to push through. It took a huge concerted effort from the team. I actually remember our first team retreat, which was summer 2016. So 3.5 years into the business. And we were still struggling with support. And there were times that, like, in the morning, all of us would sit around, all 20 of us on our laptops, and spend at least an hour, everybody in the queue doing support, try to get that under control and maintained. So yeah, it was a big challenge.
But I feel it's also great. Like, I know, like, for us, I think customer support for 1.5 years, just like, you know, every single ticket. And I think it's also a cool way, like, to connect with customers and see, you know, at the day-to-day, you face like your product's failures, the bugs, etc. So it's also a cool way, you know, as a founder, I think, to get all these learnings and get a better idea on the product. But I'm also curious, going back, you know, to your growth rate in 2015, when, you know, you start the year at like 5K and you end up at like 100K, which is like phenomenal traction. No one can deny it. And at that time, you know, like you're still bootstrap, you're solo founder, which means that you have like 100% of your company. At that time, you must, especially because you're documenting everything, you're putting everything publicly, you must receive like tons of messages from investors. So what comes through your mind at that time? Like, did you ever ask yourself, like, should I raise or not? Should I do like some cash out? Like, what comes to your mind at that point? Is it a question you've asked yourself, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I was not opposed to investors in the early days. And I'm actually not that opposed to investors now. Like, often I prefer bootstrapping, you know, and that's what I plan to do. But in a future company, if I raise money, that, like, I'm not like a dogmatic bootstrap or die kind of. We were at about 100,000. So I tried to raise money when we were at maybe 8,000 in MRR. Not very effectively. You know, my idea was to do like an influencer round and get some early key people in, get them invested. That didn't work out. I didn't pursue it hard enough. I didn't know how to structure it. That kind of thing. That's totally fine. What I ended up doing later, around the point when we were 100,000 a month, was I went to Silicon Valley and actually like pitched VCs. So I went to the SaaStr annual conference, took all the meetings that they had set up, you know, with Greylock and whoever else, Social Capital, et cetera. And a couple things. One, I was probably very bad at pitching. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the venture capitalists didn't understand our market. We're talking about email marketing for bloggers, email marketing for creators, and they were like, it's way too small of a market. And so people would say, like, that's not worth funding, which is super ironic now, because the creator, like, now you just throw the word creator economy on something.
Yeah, you get 20x in
Google Ventures is like beating down your door trying to, you know, fund your company. So that's very different. There was one venture capitalist, Tamaz Tungas from Redpoint, who, one, spent the most time with me, and then two, he got it. He got the market, and he was like, "Look, if bloggers ends up being too small, you'll just expand. You'll pick up musicians, artists. Even if down the road you decide like you're going after traditional small business, great, but you'll dominate one niche and then move on to the next one." But with that, he also said, "I don't know that you want to raise money, and I'm not sure that you have to." And then I also had a good conversation with Mike McDermott from FreshBooks, who really talked me into. Who said like, with the growth rate that you have, grow your way into profitability. You don't need to raise money, or you can delay raising money. And the longer you delay, the higher the valuation, the less dilution, and everything else. So that was all a really good path. And, it was, I'm very grateful for it. So that was the last time that we seriously considered raising money, like 5 years ago at this point. And we get the emails every week, and we have an autoresponder saying like, "No, thanks."
I have a shortcut also for VC. and basically like as a solo founder, I'm guessing that you had some really, really tough time. How did you manage? Like, first, why didn't you decide to have like co-founders? And second, like, how exactly did you surrounded yourself with, people that could really help you out in the toughest time? Like, what has helped you like during these years?
So I started ConvertKit all on my own. About a year in, when I didn't have traction, someone pitched me on partnering with them. I would be like the product engineering side of it, and they would be the marketing and sales side of it. I went down that road a little bit, and it wasn't a good fit. Then right at that 2-year mark, when it was like, okay, I'm going to double down on this, then I realized I need engineering help. And so I recruited my friend David. I was able to pay him a bit of a salary. I think I paid him $5,000 a month to start, and gave him a meaningful amount of equity. And then for the next 2 years, he really led all the engineering. And that made a huge difference to have someone just actively every day making the product better. And that was really, really good. I think, so he ended up staying for almost exactly 2 years. He loves that, like, start and like scale something. But he didn't want to lead a whole engineering team. And so he ended up moving on. And then ever since then, I've hired key people, like a fantastic COO, a great head of operations, great people in growth and marketing and all of that. And then I formed a mastermind group of like peers and really leaned on them and asked friends for help, talk through problems. And then more recently, in the last 2 years, I hired an executive coach.
Okay.
Just have someone to go to with all of that.
Can we go? I want to detail like both because it's super interesting. The mastermind you created, how exactly, like, who did you choose? Did you choose like only like bootstrap founders of SaaS companies who were maybe like a bit like bigger than you were? Was it like from friends, or did you just put network like from people that didn't know each other and like put them together?
Yeah, my mastermind group actually predated ConvertKit. And so, or it was right about the same time. No, I guess it was a bit before. And so it was all like content creators, writers, bloggers, content creators. And then it kind of evolved a little bit, but there's plenty of people in that I'm still great friends with today. So like one example would be James Clear, the author and blogger. He was in that mastermind group for a long time. Ryan Delk, who's an incredible startup founder and operator. He was responsible for all the growth at Gumroad over the years. He is now on our board of advisors. Barrett Brooks eventually became our COO and spent 5 years at ConvertKit. So the mastermind group like predated ConvertKit and ended up, being a key role for customers and team members and advisors. But let's see.
Was it like just friends, or did you reach out to people and ask them to join? And how kind of like did you structure the mastermind? Was it like once every 2 weeks you meet and you discuss about like struggles or topics, or?
Yeah, we played around with a lot of different things. At times it was more formal of like meeting every week. You'd rotate who's in the hot seat, talking through their problems, that kind of thing, and do like quick check-ins of like, hey, by the time we meet again next week, I'm going to have these things solved. But that was never a SaaS mastermind group.
Okay.
So I never actually went and made a group of, like later on. I think that would have been good. You find people who
it's not too late.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's probably just informal friends, Okay. I call up Wade from Zapier, or Chris from Wistia, or whoever else, and I'm like, hey, how do I solve this? What did you guys do when you're at this stage? Because you find companies that are like ahead of you in the path. So yeah, at this stage, I think I just keep it informal, but
okay.
Like you can definitely just cold email people and reach out and say, hey, I'm building a company. I'm at 10,000 in MRR. Like I read your post on Indie Hackers or whatever else. So you're at 20,000. I was thinking we'd pull together you and here's 3 other people I was thinking of. And what if we just had a call to jam on some of our problems? And if it goes well, we turn it into something more.
And basically like down the line, you also mentioned you had like or you're having still like a CEO coach. How does that work out exactly? Like, what do you work on? Is it like weekly meetings? Do you keep yourself? Is it like your accountability partner? Does that person challenge you? Like, how do you structure like these meetings?
Yeah, I keep it fairly informal. We hired an organization called Reboot. So it's founded by Dan Putt and Jerry Colonna and a few other people. And it's a coaching organization, that Jerry originally pioneered. He wrote a book with the same name called Reboot that I highly recommend. And over the last, I guess, a little over 2 years that we've been working with Reboot, they take a different approach. I think people think of a coach and they're like, let me hold you accountable to your metrics and all of this. And I would say this is more like therapy, where they deeply understand your business and business models and all that, but they're much more like, how do you want to show up? Why do you do what you do? How to navigate this conflict with your team, rather than let me coach you through growing your company to the next stage. And that really resonates with me. It's ended up being a really good fit.
Nice. Yeah, I like it. I think it's I think when you understand like the real reason why you're showing up like daily, why you're doing what you're doing, and you dive deep into like more of a psychological aspect of everything, I think it can really like push you like to the next level. Like we did a bit of coaching with my 2 co-founders, more on the relationship side of things, and for us it was also like extremely like helpful. It just unlock some false beliefs or barriers that you can have for yourself. So that's really cool. I'm also trying to understand, like I've read a lot about your story with ConvertKit, like you documenting most of the things you actually did, like your milestone, etc. But I'm curious, like for the audience, if we could, if you had like 3 things according to you, and let's not mention word of mouth that helped you grow to 30 million in ARR in almost 90 years. Like, what would be for you, like if you had to kind of go through like 3 examples of things you did or you are continuously like doing that are really working well and that pay off over time?
Yeah, let's see. I'd say we talked about direct sales already. That's something that I did a lot.
Yeah.
To generate that word of mouth.
You're still doing that right now, or you've stopped?
Yeah, we still do it today.
Okay.
I had some calls earlier today. Instead of focusing on getting any account now, it's focused on getting certain influential accounts.
Okay.
But that's how you get the like Tim McGraw's and Arnold Schwarzenegger's and all using the platform.
I was going to mention Arnold Schwarzenegger. When I saw that on your website, I was like, how did you get Arnold Schwarzenegger?
A lot of direct outreach, asking friends for help, connections. Hey, who's the right-hand person who runs this, etc. And it's just kind of working through that process. So yeah, we've moved from like any account to now getting influential accounts and then trying to sell through an industry once we have an influential account. So that's one thing. I think content marketing is something that we've done really well. Our single biggest channel for traffic is organic search.
Okay. So not SEO, but more like the brand in itself, the fact that the content you're producing is high quality and shareable, or was it really, or do you also...
That's good SEO now.
Yeah.
There used to be a time that you could, and maybe you still can somewhat, but like publish a whole bunch of posts on a range of topics and just try to like hit every single keyword. But now it's really about building or writing incredible long form guides and like building up backlinks and writing the definitive guide to X. And so it's a huge channel for us and one that we're continuing to grow. And then I think the third one would be affiliates. In our space, a lot of bloggers and podcasters using us and talking about us. We generated a lot of publicity from that in the early days, and still do. And that's been a big channel.
How do you feel about like affiliation? Because if I look at SaaS companies, I see a lot of SaaS companies that can leverage this channel like effectively, but others sometimes, that is a bit, for example, if you take ClickFunnels, I think they're doing like an amazing job with affiliates. It's like the biggest share of their revenue. However, it pushes sometimes people to produce content that is really clickbait in order to drive like the most click, the most views, the most shares, etc., which down the line would bring us the most revenue. So for ClickFunnels, it's great because it's a lot of like traffic, but in the end, for their brand, it kind of like give a certain tone to the brand whenever you're doing like too much affiliate. So what's your position on it, and what's your like view about affiliation? Do you select your partners, or is it something really like self-service?
Yeah, so it used to be totally wide open, and we've made it now where you have to apply. I think it's all about how you position the product and how, like, what types of affiliates you're going for and how you position it themselves. I wouldn't blame affiliates for the ClickFunnels positioning. I think that that's something that they did themselves. They positioned the product as like a get rich quick kind of angle and went after those customers. So you could definitely have that, and it's worth policing your affiliate program pretty tightly to make sure that what people are doing and saying is on brand. But affiliates, when done well, and again, you have to actively recruit the affiliates. You can't just open it up and be like, "Oh, I didn't get any affiliates," or "This is who I got." Right? It's a sales process again.
Do you have someone in charge of the affiliate program? Like, is it a special department in your team?
We do. Within it, we have an affiliate manager on our marketing team.
Okay. And how exactly did you find him? Was it like someone from the team who knew ConvertKit really well and then moved to the partnership side? Or was it someone who knew already, like had like an affiliate network and joined the company?
Yeah, so this is someone that we recruited from another company, but they actually just joined the company.
Okay. Okay.
And let's see. But over the years, we've trained people up in that role. We've taken any approach. I would prefer to hire someone who has deep connections with the affiliate network, especially for the type that we want, of like creators, rather than someone who has like tons of experience running an affiliate program.
Okay. Yeah, because human connection in the end like works. It's much easier. Like if you have the relationships, it's easier to transform it into like a business one. And I've seen you like writing a lot from the start, like building in public. Now it's becoming like a proper movement. I'm not sure it was called like this, like back in the days. How much did you feel like having this blog and sharing all these stories helped you in your growth with ConvertKit?
I think it helped a lot, somewhat for the marketing attention that I got, but probably most for the network that it opened up. When you're writing and sharing about this stuff, then people will follow you, respond. When you reach out to them, they'll offer to help you. And that's more valuable, I think, than even the customers that you get from it. Though we definitely got customers from it. There's downsides as well, like sharing all the revenue numbers. Competitors will talk about it. If you have a down month, people are like, "Oh, what's up with that?" And they'll point it out. So we do it from a mission and vision perspective of like really our mission is to help creators earn a living. And so one small way that we do that is telling our whole story and publishing all our numbers so people can learn from us. and go from there. So the full level of transparency that we do, I would probably only recommend if that's like a core part of who you are and your mission. But I wouldn't recommend it as like as a business strategy.
Yeah. And what would you sell apart from competitors? Like kind of bitching about the fact you can have like a down month or like a slow month. Did you see anything that was really annoying by being like so transparent, either from the employee standpoint, like wanted to maybe like get more money, more bonuses, or was it like something really based just on the competitors, or did you have any haters or?
Yeah. No, we already pay most of the money to our team. So more than half of all the profits in the company go to the team in the form of profit sharing. And so
that's cool.
I've definitely encountered companies where they have that problem, right? Where the founders are taking home $5 million a year and the team members are getting paid $75,000 a year. And the team's like, can we have raises? Like, no, there's not enough money. And they're like, I can see, I never took that approach. And so on one hand, we didn't take home millions of dollars a year from ConvertKit. But on the other hand, it's led to a great relationship with the team and an amazing culture and all of that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a different way of doing business.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite nice. Like that's something we started to implement where we share like a percentage of the EBITDA or like profit. It's similar, and essentially like I've seen really like a good reaction from the team. I think it's great. It motivates everyone towards the same goal, which is your monthly recurring revenue. So it's quite cool to push everyone in the right direction of the business growth. Because my feeling, when people have only individual goals, is that sometimes it pushes people to optimize only toward their own goals and not the team goals, which can be a bit tricky. And now that we've talked a lot about, like all these great times, the growth, what has worked quite well for you, I really want to dig in a bit more, in the less glamorous moments.
Yeah.
Like at first we kind of touched based a little bit, about that time where you had this challenge for 6 months to grow to 5K, and you ended up at 2K, and then there is this year and a half where it's a lot of ups and downs. But after this initial challenge, you have your audience that you've built. You know that you're successful while selling digital products, but you can't manage to hit that 5K and you're stuck at 2K. Like, how can you keep the motivation for a year and a half? Like, if you had to go back to, like this, the Nathan from that time, how do you feel at that time? Like, what's keeping you alive and motivated for your journey?
I had a pretty clear idea of the future state, what I wanted it to be, the recurring revenue, the product that I wanted to exist for myself. So that's a big part of it, of like knowing why you want to do something and what you're trying to make exist in the world. So yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it. I think if you're doing it just for the income, we're like, I want to start a SaaS company so I can build it and get it to 50,000 a month in revenue, and then we can sell it at this multiple. I think it's a lot harder to stay focused on that because you can get to a point where it's just not interesting anymore. You're like, look, if I'm doing it for the money, then there's money over here. Like, let me chase this and then that. And you're looking for something that's a quick win. And so, I mean, it's a cliche answer, but the most important thing for persevering and sticking with something long-term is having a compelling reason why you're doing it.
And what was like, I know you mentioned like you wanted that recurring revenue, and I understand that when you're selling like digital products or service, you have like that income of money, but again, it's not recurring. So what was for you the motivation of that recurring? Was it just to say like, okay, I know that if a month I'm feeling, like a bit down, I know that, the next month, because it's monthly recurring revenue, like I'm not going to lose everything if I just, kind of like stop working for a month? Or was it just like, like a mindset issue? Or what was the drive, to get recurring revenue?
Yeah. So I guess there are two main things. One is wanting consistent income. When you're doing an audience-driven business that revolves around launches, then you'll make, $20,000 in one month and $2,000 the next, or $50,000 and then $10,000 or whatever the number is. And that's hard to budget around. That's like one month you're on top of the world and the other you're like watching the sales come in and you're like, oh, this isn't so good, And so watching for that. And then the other thing is that a lot of my audience was around teaching people how to design software. That was my career. That's what I did. First, I did it full time for a company, and then I did it freelance. And then once the books and products took off, I really just did it for myself. So a lot of my examples of what to design were like, I wasn't even running my own apps anymore, really, because the books and courses were selling so much more. So I started to design or teach off of made up examples. And that wasn't as fun. And so I didn't want to be the guy who now only taught it. I still wanted to be doing it. And so for me, getting into SaaS, part of it was that I would be actively doing it, both to teach from, and then most importantly, to learn. I didn't have this level of clarity on the ideas before, but I think about wanting to set a goal that's big enough that it'll change who you are when you achieve it. There's this famous, it's called the parable of the Mexican fisherman. I think it's in the 4-Hour Workweek and a bunch of other books. And it's basically this, this investment banker is works super hard and all of this, and he's starting to get burned out. And so he finally takes a vacation and goes to this little fishing village in Mexico. And he, where he's walking along the beach, he comes across this fisherman and he meets him and starts talking to him, and he finds out that this fisherman has the easiest life. He, fishes just for a few hours a day. And then with that, he can just go and play guitar with his friends and take a nap every afternoon and all this super easy life. And the investment banker's like, well, hold on. Why don't you work a whole day and save up the money and buy a bigger boat? And, and he goes through this whole process that involves hiring a team and getting wealthy and building opening a cannery and all this stuff. And the story ends with the fisherman going okay, what would I do then? And the investment banker's like, well, you'd sell it all and then you'd be super rich and then you'd retire to a little Mexican fishing village and you'd hang out, take a nap every day and all of that. And everyone laughs at the story and likes it because it's this, you go on this whole journey to get back to something that you could have now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's all the message of the 4-Hour Workweek. I have a different take on it because if let's say I'm the blogger who can make $5,000 a month, to say $10,000 a month, $100,000 a year or so off of my blog, and I can do it with 5 hours or 10 hours of effort a week. I'd have all the time for going to the gym, whatever else I want, and I could do that right now. I could have done it. I did do it 8 years ago, and so it's why keep going? If you follow the fisherman story, then it's just shortcut it, bypass the whole process, don't waste all the time. I think I have a different take, and I want to go on a journey that's hard enough, set a goal that's big enough. Mine right now is growing ConvertKit to 100 million a year in revenue, because I know that I will be a fundamentally different person when I achieve that goal than I am today. I will have to overcome some really hard challenges. I'll have to learn so much. I'll have to hire and recruit a team and everything. And so I'm the one who hears the Mexican fisherman story and says, they're not the same. They ended up at the same point, but it's a different person who goes on that journey. And I want to be the person who undertakes that journey.
So for you, it's really more about for you, it's really more about the journey, the learning, and also the personal growth. Because in the end, you realize that, I feel you on this topic. The struggles I had for me, because it's I can rely on your story. It's at first you get started, you don't have a lot of clarity of where you're doing things. recurring revenue, when you go from service to recurring revenue, is very reassuring because you're like, yeah, I mean, it's recurring, so it's like a lot of safety. But then you start getting money, then more and more money. You start paying yourself. Then money doesn't come like it's not a problem anymore. Like you're making millions. But then down the line, you're asking yourself like, is that where does that end? Because the first step is going to that million. Then you go to 10 million. Then you want to go to 100. Then once you are at 100, you might think, okay, like how do I go to 1 billion? And the truth is like what I like about your story is the fact that you value the journey. You value like the personal growth. You value the fact that what you want is to become a different person. But my question to you is like, do you feel like once you hit that milestone and that goal that for you it's like a really big goal to reach, do you feel like the next step is to set up another or a bigger goal? Or how do you see, like, do you see an end in all of that? Because, like the fisherman story is all about that. It's about like going back to that same point, being a different person. That's your take on the story. But also it's like having a goal to an end. And I'm wondering, like what's in it? Like, is it a next goal after that? Or is it just like maybe doing something totally different?
I think, well, the first thing is once ConvertKit hits 100 million a year in revenue, like nothing magical is going to change. When it tips over and adds that extra digit, like we want to achieve self-actualization or whatever else. So it's not at all about the goal. And you could probably sub in a bunch of other goals. It's really about the journey and going on a journey that will change you. It's hard enough that will change you. So then the question is, what happens when you achieve the goal? And it's an interesting one because you're right that most people will just raise the goal. Okay, 100 million a year in revenue. What about 500 million a year in revenue? Can we become the next MailChimp, whatever it is? And I think instead of speculating on that now, what my approach would be is to decide at that stage 2 questions. What do I want this next phase of my life to look like? And who do I want to become? And then what is a goal that lives at the intersection between those 2 things? The next phase of my life at that point might not be like working really hard to scale a SaaS company, or it might be, I don't know. There could be a bunch of different things there. And then who I want to become, maybe at that point, I'll feel like I've learned enough for now as a leader of a company in that way. Maybe I'll want to do something totally different. Or maybe I want a totally new challenge and say, instead of this company, I want to do it with something else. Like there's all kinds of challenges being an investor or like running it. Maybe the bootstrap path was incredibly hard and I learned so much from it. And maybe at that point I'll be like, okay, let's do it again, but let's do it venture funded and let's do it in way less time because that's an entirely new set of skills, an entirely different set of skills to learn. And so I hope at that point, when I achieve the goal, it'll just be asking those 2 questions. What do I want the next phase of my life to look like? And who do I want to become? And what skills and challenges do I need to overcome to get there?
I really like your take on this and your view. I think it's super, super interesting. What most people will tell you is that I like the fact that you are like super focused on that one goal and that you understand that because right now your life looks just amazing to be focused on one single goal and then to know that once you've reached it, you will ask you these 2 questions like, who do I want to become and what do I want to achieve next? But the truth, I mean, the truth, not the truth, but the question I have for you is more like during this journey, as you get closer to that goal, do you feel like your brain is solely focused on reaching the goal? Or do you still ask yourself and start asking yourself before you actually reach the goal, what's coming next?
I think it makes sense to speculate on what's coming next. And if you're doing that, I'd recommend writing it down because that'll change over time.
Okay.
Like if you had a journaling prompt that you came back to every 6 months or something and said it was just after I hit 100 million in annual recurring revenue or substituting whatever your big goal is, I'm going to do fill in the blank.
Okay.
I bet that answer would change. every 6 months. And I bet it would be really instructive to have that where, say it takes 5 years for me to go from 30 million to 100 million. And having those 10 check-in points where I can flip back and say, oh, okay, in December 2021, I said the answer would be this. Whereas July 2022, I said it would be this. And to actually write down. There's two magical things about journaling. One is, the forced introspection that everyone, like having to think through a problem, having to articulate that and what comes from it. But the other is that it's a snapshot of your mind in that moment, what you think is possible, what you value, and everything else. And a lot of the times we don't see the ways that we change until you are able to look back on those snapshots. And so, yeah, I think it makes sense to look ahead. And if you're going to do that, make sure to snapshot it in a way that you can refer back to it so you can see your own development and how you, your skills, your values, and your challenges have changed over time.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. And I know we're almost running out of time. So I have like one question before the fire 3 question that would be super rapid. I know that your team is spread across like 28 cities. We also have built like a company remote. So I'm curious to understand, how did you build a strong culture by being like fully remote? What are like, if you could give like 2 to 3 tips for people to build a strong culture, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a huge question. So the first thing that I would start with is defining culture. A lot of people think of culture as, your free lunches and foosball table, whatever else you have in the office. I think of culture as trust. Do you trust your employees, your team members to work hard, to work towards the same goals, to work towards the same mission? Do they trust you to take care of them and have their best interests at heart? Do they trust each other to deliver like critical feedback that's really valuable instead of just brushing things under the rug? So many things. And so a lot of what you'll see me doing to build culture is how can I help people know each other and trust each other? I actually did a Twitter thread. If you just search Nathan Barry Twitter remote culture, it's got a bunch of things. The thread went viral. I think it has almost 1 million views at this point.
Nice.
And it's got a bunch of things that I do in there, but direct feedback is a huge thing that I always push for. Another is giving people an opportunity to get to know each other. So we do an internal podcast. It's just for within the team where we interview each other about our life stories. Where'd you grow up? What did you value? What did you think you were going to be like when you were a kid? What was your career going to be? Where'd you go to school? How'd you end up working at ConvertKit? What path did you take? And it's this amazing tool to be able to get to know your coworkers. And the more I think that you know someone, the easier it is to trust them. And then the more effective you are working together. And the more you can have a generous interpretation to the things that they say. So there's a whole bunch of things in there. Look up the Twitter thread. I'll probably do a blog post.
Nice.
Hopefully by the time this comes out, I'll have a blog post as well.
Awesome. We will link it. We will link it to the episode. That's dope. So quick game with 3 fire questions. What's your favorite book or podcast?
Okay, favorite book. This is tough. Probably The Lord of the Rings for fiction. Nonfiction, there's so many. I don't know. The book I give away the most is Derek Sivers' Anything You Want. Okay. It's nice. A super quick read. It takes like an hour. And I have a bunch of copies. I think I only have 1 copy right now somewhere. Yeah, here.
Okay.
Only 1 copy because I gave away the other 5.
I will purchase it.
Sounds good.
Who's your favorite Bootstrap founder and why?
Oh, good question. I'm going to give 2 because I like to cheat at questions.
You're allowed.
The first 2 that came to mind would be Chris Savage from Wistia. Just the way, he raised capital and then later bought all his investors out, or all the ones who wanted to be bought out. Just so thoughtful as a content creator and as a leader. Big fan there. Another would be Laura Roeder. She founded a social media scheduling tool called Edgar.
Oh, yeah.
Now is working on a tool for coaches called Paperbell.
She will be on the show.
she's fantastic. I'm a huge Laura Roeder fan.
Nice. Awesome. And favorite thing to do to regain your motivation during the hard times?
Doing something away from the computer. So I like woodworking. I'm talking to you from my tiny house office that I built myself.
Nice.
I have a giant sign behind me that says "Create" that I built in my wood shop.
Wow.
I like,
nice.
I like things I like running an Airbnb real estate business as a hobby with some friends. And then I really like to play soccer. So
that's cool. And you're a Paris Saint-Germain fan, which is cool.
Yes, including making the trip over to
Marseille.
to Marseille for a game. So yes.
Awesome. Well, Nathan, thanks a lot. Where can people learn more about you, like if they want to follow your journey?
Yeah, so just nathanbarry.com is my blog, and I have a podcast, everything else there. I'm just at Nathan Barry. Barry is Barry. And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, all of that. So awesome. That's where I am.
We will put all the links directly in the description. Thanks a lot, Nathan, and have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening to the Bootstrap Stories, the only podcast where bootstrap entrepreneurs share their journey in all transparency. If you enjoyed this episode, don't hesitate to leave us a review. And in case you want to see the interview, all episodes are live on the Guillaume Moubesh YouTube channel. Check out the link in the description and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Have an amazing day, and make sure to also join us in our amazing Bootstrap community where we all help each other to become successful and grow a profitable business. Take care and talk to you soon.